Hello everybody and welcome back to LMM, and if you're enjoying what you're seeing on the channel at the moment, how about giving this video a like and maybe subscribing to the channel to help us grow, and perhaps even check out our Patreon. Today I've got a bit of a different video for you because I want to show you two of the most ridiculous stations that I have ever come across. This is Whitwell Station, which is the home of my locomotive fleet. You've probably seen the 165 and my 48 is currently here as well, as is the one that we helped save from the scrapyard, Ruston 393303. This, where I'm standing now, is the original track bed. The museum and the railway itself that we operate on is over in what was the goods yard over there. And this has been rebuilt with new buildings here and the signal box being rebuilt to represent the one that was once here. This railway here was part of the Midland and Great Northern Joint Railway, or the M&GNR, or the Muddle and Go Nowhere Railway. This is part of the same network that went up the way, going through Melton Constable and eventually reaching Holt, which is now part of the Norfolk Railway. This station here opened way back in 1882 and then closed to passenger traffic in 1959, although the railway continued in use for goods traffic, and that bit is actually quite important, so we'll come back to that later. The nearest station to us is that is in Reefham. This is a short mile and a half away from Whitwell, but if you wanted to catch a train here, well, you'd have had to go all the way back to Norwich or somewhere else, because the two railways that ran a mile and a half from each other in two very small places. In fact, Whitwell is tiny. It's like, realistically, most people catching a train from Whitwell would have come from Reefham. You couldn't do a train between the two. And I find that just hilarious, because this railway was the Great Eastern Railway, and this one went across and went down to Dereham. So entirely different railways which intersected in a very silly way. Now today this is now a station cafe, and the trackbed has now become a footpath, and this loops all the way back to Whitwell, because although it's closed back in 52 to passenger traffic, this remained in use for goods. And you may be saying, well, didn't you say that about the station at Whitwell? Yes, I did, but they weren't connected, so that must have been something interesting. Well, follow me as we go for a walk this way. Following the footpath away from Reefham brings us to here. This is where the two lines connected. Well, they didn't really connect, one went over the top of the other. This little bit of land here with the grass and the nettles and the assorted whatever's in it was the line that went to Whitwell. This was the M&GN that headed that way, going up towards Holt and the Norfolk Railway today. And at that point where that big tree is, that's where the two crossed. The hedgerow you can see at the end of this field is where the main line that came from Reefham of the Great Eastern Railway came running across, going that way towards Dereham. The two railways, two stations a mile and a half apart, which never actually connected. Apart from the fact they did, the fact that both lines then kept running as goods is because British Railways worked out that if you put a curve in just there, you could link the two sites. Not so passengers could travel between Whitwell and Reefham finally and do that mile and a half, but so the railway could serve the cement works at Lenwade and to take sand from Drayton. It also meant that this was a functional route to be able to move stuff from the different stations in Norwich. Rather than having to send the trains to God knows where, you could send them round the loop, which was quite a long way round, and there are stories that have come from the line of trains which didn't really need to run that way, but somehow it happened, and the crew loved these silly little turns they got to do, running the long way round Norwich to move like a single item of rolling stock. And in order to join these two main lines that ran so close to each other, they built the single tightest curve on the British main line to link two silly bits of railway together and link two stations a mile and a half apart, which had never been together and never allowed passengers to travel. And that's just here. And this is the curve. You can see how stupidly tight it is as it curves back around there. There is a point where the two paths of the main line going straight and parallel are less than a mile apart. It's ludicrously tight for a curve on the main line, on the standard gauge. On the narrow gauge, yeah, that's fine, you'd expect this, but this is ludicrous. It means that running the mile and a half between Whitwell and Reefham Station was actually a 6-mile loop, and it's just mad that it blows my mind, and it amuses me so much that such a stupid idea, two separate stations joined by this. What I also really love is how easy it is to see where the railway ran. You can see here where the Midland and Great Northern Railway used to continue off straight, and you can see where the deviation happened
for the new bank, and equally just here you can see where the Great Eastern used to charge across here and where the deviation went in there as well. I love being able to fly the drone over these areas and being able to use tools like Google Maps and make it even more clear to how the railway once operated. And when you start noticing the signs of where a railway is, it's amazing what you can find and how many relics remain, like the road crossing over the cutting here. And once you realise that this was a cutting of the Great Eastern Railway to get the railway low enough to go under the Midland and Great Northern Railway, you realise just how obvious and what a scar it's left on the landscape. But what a sight it would have been to see trains passing at this point. The other thing I love is the fact that there's so much obvious of the railway going in that way, but then just gets to a field and the cutting's been filled in and there's no remains of it at all. And as wonderful as this curve was, and the fact that you had to go 3 miles to go around a curve to go back again 3 miles, it couldn't save the railway forever. Times were changing, and in the early 70s the sand traffic stopped, and the concrete traffic stopped in about 1981, I think, which spelled the end for the line. Also, Norwich was changing and developing itself and didn't need separate railway stations and adopted just the one station that we know and have today, which meant there didn't really need to be this loop going all the way around. And so the railway was completely closed and the track was completely lifted, leaving it as it is today, where you can just imagine where trains once ran and see the impact the railway once had upon the landscape.
Now, this is a possible plan for the Whitwell and Reefham Railway, for it to come all the way out of here and loop back into Reefham. And I love the idea that maybe one day we'll achieve that, because I just think it'd be hilarious that, oh, when's the next train? Oh, you just missed it. Oh. But if you just walk for 10 minutes up the road, you'll get to it and you'll beat it, because it's got to do 6 miles to get to the next station. And it'd be really nice to finally be able to have passengers getting on at Whitwell and getting to Reefham.
It's worth noting that the majority of the track bed is still in situ, all the way out of Norwich, coming up through Whitwell itself, up back into Reefham and onwards towards Wroxham on the Bure Valley Railway, because this has become a footpath and bridle way known as Marriott's Way, so you can walk the entire track bed for yourself, which is maybe something I'll do in a future video.
And with that, thank you all for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this little silly bit looking at one of the most weird bits of the network, which I absolutely love. And what a shame it's disappeared. So with that, thank you all very much for watching. If you have enjoyed this, how about clicking over there for one of the things we've done at Reefham, or down there for some of the adventures with my 165. Probably, I don't know, something like that. And let me know in the comments if you want to see more of these little bits looking at abandoned bits and interesting bits of the network. Ta-da!